We had one at the Home Depot area where we recommended, elevating a particular partition. Has staff suggested anything like that for this project?
No, we haven't recommended any kind of sound walls. Sometimes sound walls have kind of an opposite reaction if you point them the wrong way. And since we don't have a noise study, that's not something we've gone to.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that the area is essentially surrounded by buildings except for that front parking lot.
Correct. Yes. So it is a little hard to see on here, but it's within a courtyard with basically buildings on three sides that you can see.
And to the
My
south,
mouse
is
is
that a
going
building
around.
as well?
Yes.
Right there.
And then there is a building to the south here.
Okay. Any other questions? Stan? Okay, we will go ahead and open it up to public hearing, open up the public hearing and invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to address us.
Hello, my name is Sean Russell, and I serve in an executive capacity for Tuscaloosa Bible Church. And I just want to say thank you guys for allowing us to present. Thank you to the city staff for all your time and efforts in helping us put this together, and for considering our request to update our existing conditional use permit and include outdoor amplified sound in these areas. And I'd love to address some of the questions, but I'll just kind of go through the statement that we put together as a church. One, I want to just start by saying it's important for us and our sincere desire as a church to be good neighbors. We don't take that lightly. That's something serious for us as a church. It's not in our best interest as a church or any church to be bad neighbors. And I think our track record at Atascadero Bible Church speaks to that. I think if you look at our partnerships with Echo, supporting and working with the high school and middle school, administration staff and students, and even from hosting celebrations of life and events at our church, I believe we have done those. That's not to pat ourselves on the back and say we're doing a really good job. It's just to say that we have been and continue to be someone that cares about this community, and we want to be good neighbors. So I just want to make that very clear. That's the most important thing for us as a church and as a community member. ABC is made up of about 800 families or almost 3,000 people that call this place home, and I think they would care the same way. So we want to make sure we represent them well and be good neighbors, and have them be able to say the same thing about that as far as we're concerned. A couple of points I want to just share regarding the request. One, ABC has been operating in compliance with our current CUP for years. It's a permit we were granted for church use in the public zone, and over the years, we have stewarded that privilege well. In my opinion, I've only been at the church for 15 years, but the church has been there for nearly 100. And in my opinion, I think that's evidenced in small part, I think, by the fact that you're even willing to listen to this request. Number two, I think amplified sound will only occur during worship times in the courtyard. And again, I think I can kind of address that question in terms of where the amplification is directed. If you're looking at this map, the arrow, if you were to point the arrow toward the creek, it's shielded on all sides by all of those buildings. And so when we walk the property with community development director, he was pretty confident that we were doing a good job of actually shielding where the sound was directed. It's my understanding, and I think this addresses one of the questions that came up. Why would we want amplified sound during anything on our campus aside from the things that we do inside our worship center? And I think that's a good and appropriate one to ask. If you've been to our church on either a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, we have about 200 or 300 kids that converge on campus. And it's a great place for them to grow and have fun and enjoy themselves. It's a safe place for them to be. And with that many kids, using amplified sound to direct such a large group and providing music in the courtyard, I think is essential. Our desire is to continue to serve the kids and the families of the community. Could we do it without that? Sure, we could, but it's a lot harder to direct that many people in that small of a space without amplified sound. It's my understanding that the proposed amendment is consistent with the general plan and that it satisfies all applicable provisions. It's also my understanding that neither the amplified sound from the courtyard which was measured at a maximum, and as you saw from the map, of 65 decibels at the closest property line, nor the times it was amplified, which would be prior to 7 p.m. on any weekday and prior to 4 p.m. on any weekends, would be detrimental to the health, safety, or welfare of the general public or persons living or working in the surrounding area. And looking through the conditions that would, this was my first time seeing the new conditions, aside from when I received the packet. None of them seem unacceptable to us to administer or to fall in line with. And I think lastly, the sound levels of the highway, according to the DOT, which I think was presented in the report as well, average between 70 and 80 decibels as an hourly equivalent. Well, that's certainly not our measuring stick. We are and will continue to remain sensitive to the levels of amplified sound that we project, and we will regulate with neighborly care in mind. Again, we want to be good neighbors. It's our desire to be a good member of this community, and I think we will be judicious in how we use that privilege. And should that not be the case, we will indeed listen and self-regulate. Again, it's not in our best interest to be a bad neighbor. So thank you for your consideration of the requests, and I can answer any other questions you might have.
Questions? Dennis?
I appreciate everything that the church has done and does for community. It is a wonderful old church that we've had in the Tuscarora. With respect to being a good neighbor, if someone across the creek comes across and says it's too loud, then are you willing to, and again, we have a threshold, a low point and a high point of 70 decibels. Are you going to be willing to turn that down so that at the highest point where you could have 70, would you turn it down so it's 63 or something like that? Would you be willing to accommodate people if they do complain?
Yeah, and Mariah, is it okay to move to the next one that shows the decibel ratings? To kind of address the question, I think it's important just to see the numbers that we took. Again, a self-assessment on our part, but when you see the 88 in red, that's from our courtyard directed toward the buildings, and that's music at the level that it would be played at.
Yeah, but it's 88. Would you turn the 88 down to 63?
Correct. You turn the 88 down to 63, and then you're going to see the creek levels at 40, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, are we willing to turn it down? I mean, if someone comes over to the church and is very adamant that it's disturbing their sleep and it's part of their we would obviously address that in a way that's positive.
I mean, the freeway is kind of for me, a poor example. We all hear it. I live.
Is the high school a good example in the football games?
Well, yeah, I would say,
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's compare it to that. They're more than 2 hours,
Yeah,
right? It's a lot louder.
but it wasn't used as an example in
Sure.
our presentation.
It's a good example to
Where I
draw
was
from.
going with the freeway, though, it's an ambient noise that we have all become accustomed to. I mean, we don't necessarily hear it, although it's there.
Sure.
Whereas this is going to be a different sound that people are going to hear. And there was a question about how the projection was, and I used the park as an example. I live on the backside of where the music is being projected at the park. It's being projected towards the west. I live to the southeast, and I can hear it clearly, and it's a mile away. And it's probably a lot louder than 88 decibels, but nonetheless, it travels. And so I'm just real concerned that the neighbors, the use, however benign it seems, is going to be perceived by some neighbors as something they just haven't lived with at all. These same neighbors, not to say that they have been living with echo too at the same time. We've heard plenty of complaints about homeless people and how it affects them in that area. So this has just been another example of them having something that changed their way that they live.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you use the highway example, if the decibel ratings are between 70 and 90 or 70 and 80 as an hourly equivalent, but neighbors get used to it. And I think in your words, it was ambient noise because it's constant. How's that different than something at 65 that's projected?
It's the different type of sound. Again, maybe after 5 years of this music being amplified, neighbors might get used to it after that curve. But at the
It's like if they
beginning,
moved in next to a highway.
it's gonna be a shock.
Hmm.
Anyway, thank you.
That's a question, yeah.
Randy,
So what did you use for sound projection? Like, was it your band having a jam?
Yeah, so we had our band projected out.
Okay, so were you running like a PA, like amp
So-
cabinets and?
And those readings are just from the music, not from spoken word. And so our worship service, if we were to do a worship event or something in our courtyard like that, the average ratings would probably be less than that. That's just the worship music alone.
And the reason I'm asking, I gotta ask this question too on top of it. Did you have a drummer there?
We did.
Okay,
And not someone playing a cajon.
okay. So that's a very.
It's an important question. Absolutely.
Because as soon as the drums get
Yes.
involved, everyone goes up. So I don't want to, assume this and it's a couple of people with acoustics plugged into just small. amps.
Absolutely. Good question.
So the trajectory of your stage. So looking at this picture, all right, looking at 88, what way does this stage face? Does it face like, pointed down at 62, pointed to the right at 63?
Yeah, let's call the right side. I believe that's southwest.
Okay,
So let's say it's pointing somewhere between the 62 and the 65, but in between it, if you look at it, that's shielded by the cafe. There's a building in there. So it would be directed that way into our courtyard, into our family center and our cafe buildings.
okay. And when you did this test, did you do any moving around as far as cabinets? Like, did you try facing with the highway to see if it changes readings? And if you did, was everything still consistent?
Yeah, so we took all the readings on our property lines, and I think someone mentioned earlier, why didn't we take the property readings or readings from the residents across the creek? Those are private properties. I wouldn't have thought to have gone to take it from a private property across the creek, but yeah, so. Those readings on the street are from Echo, from the apartment street, on the apartments that the church owns across the street, and then from AT&T.
Okay. And I got one last question for you. Have you had any complaints from the local neighborhood for anything like this? Like any issues recently?
Not that we've seen, but
Victoria.
Okay, this is not something that I personally need as a condition of approval, but I wanted to just open it up right now since we don't have dialogue on these items outside of meetings or directly calling you. And I apologize, I didn't get a chance to, but I was curious about the conditions of approval between March and September. And can you,
yeah, I think that's,
what is going on with those months for you guys?
that wasn't part of what we requested.
Okay,
And so I would almost stand with you in the fact that September, October, November, or October, November, December are not quiet months for us. Like, we still do things. And so we
Right.
we would still appreciate the opportunity to have it within those months.
well, yeah, the factor that you mentioned earlier, I assume it's preteens and teens and a safe place for them to recreate and be. And we all know that between September and March, we have Thanksgiving break, we have Christmas break.
There will probably
What are we supposed to call it?
less-
Winter break now.
Right.
So, it's, yeah, it might increase. And so I was just thinking, if we are to consider this item and we've put a lot of energy into reviewing this item, preparing for it the last time it was proposed and then getting to move it to today, I would want us to take a look at that. And I would be a proponent, I think, of amending that. So, okay, thanks for elaborating.
Any other questions?
Not necessarily a question, but I would like to kind of tap off of what she just said. And I want to make sure that I interpreted what you said correctly. So in your opinion, pretty much that time, October to February, seems like if anything, almost a busier time for your congregation.
I don't know that it's busier. I just think it's, we would still have opportunities in that time to minister in those spaces. I think it actually is less frequent that we would have youth groups meeting because of winter break. We typically pause during those times, but there are times that we would meet in those months.
Okay.
And I don't envision us doing that many events outside. I think it's just a provision to us doing it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then we will open it up to members of the public. If anybody would like to speak on this subject, if you approach the podium and State your name, limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Good evening. My name is Teresa Robinson. I didn't intend to speak on this topic tonight, but we will say the Lord works in mysterious ways. So my husband and I have lived in Atascadero for 23 years, and we live on a beautiful street behind the high school. And I want to agree with Mr. Schmidt that the acoustics in Atascadero are very perhaps unique. On foggy mornings, we can hear the tigers and the monkeys at the zoo. We're quite a ways from there. Yes. Sure.
Could you
Sorry.
speak into the
Yeah.
microphone, please?
And so, anyway, so our acoustics, as far as where we're at, is affected by not only the sounds from Atascadero Lake and events there, but the high school, of course, and the events at the Sunken Gardens. So another example, the Tamale Festival, which we love. We hear the mariachis clearly through the evening and eventually have to close our windows so that we can listen to our own television or do things that we need to do to prepare for the next day. So those are just examples. So for my husband and myself, at some point, there's a breaking point because here we have just another opportunity for noise that, although as Mr. Russell said, doesn't affect the health and welfare of individuals, it does affect the use and enjoyment of our own property. And so to be outdoors or to be even indoors and have to close our windows so that we can hear what we need to hear is a disturbance. And to hear that as a member of our community, I have to go down to the church and complain to get the sounds levels to come down. I really don't want to be that person. And I don't think that that responsibility should fall on me personally. So I guess I would request that the decibels be maintained under that 50 decibel level, if approved, or not approved, and look at this again.
Thank you. Any other, anybody else that would like to speak to us? Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion. And or a motion. Now, I just wanted to make a comment because Commissioner Schmidt did ask why they weren't taking readings across the creek. One, the municipal code requires it at the property line. Is that correct? Sound levels at the property line.
Correct.
And we have an open space on the other side of that property line, right? So the sound's not going to increase across the property lines, right?
Correct.
Okay. So that would be my only comment as to why we wouldn't do that. It's not a requirement of it, and I don't know that unless they're looking for something below 50, I don't know that there's any benefit of that going across the creek with all the trees personally.
It's more of the receptor. It doesn't matter what volume it is. It could be 40. It's changing, as was common. It might change the lifestyle of the people who lived across the creek. Although the applicant said they couldn't go in the backyard, to me, if they would have went in the street in front of the houses and then measured it there, and then they could say, well, it was 30 here as we listened to it and measured it, and then it's much more realistic. Again, those people are the ones who are going to be, they're the receptor of the sound. And so,
I understand, although from a sound perspective, I don't think you could do that because you would get the ambient sound. Your reading would be the ambient sound of the entire neighborhood, not just what the sound of the equipment is, right? So, any other comments or?
Is there a way to like actually hear what 70 decibels is, or would that like blast our ears out right now?
Can you,
Like, could we?
we used to get a chart which showed, what normal.
I know, I must have,
speak it-
for
like-
some reason, I left the chart out of this.
Cause like freeway sound is 70 to 80 decibels. I'm like, okay. I'm thinking of like at a rest stop, what it sounds like, and I don't know, I just like, I would love like an actual auditory example right now, right now.
I don't know that I feel like I would have to be a little bit more of an expert to adjust the speakers.
Yeah.
I just did a quick reminder to myself. But about 70 decibels would be TV audio or a vacuum cleaner. And that would be like if you were next
But
to the
not for
vacuum.
your deaf mother-in-law, right? That would be louder than 70 decibels. Okay, so like a vacuum cleaner. Okay, that gives me a better idea. And so do you have one for 50 decibels?
That was my next little search here. 50 would be a quiet conversation, quiet office, quiet refrigerator, moderate rainfall.
So these readings at the edge of the property is somewhere between a quiet conversation and a vacuum cleaner.
Yes.
Okay.
And I
Thank you.
can look up more specifics too.
I mean,
because I
I
understand.
feel like those are like normal everyday kind of sounds.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously you don't want a vacuum cleaner going on in your head all the time, but I would say vacuum cleaner and music have different quality of sound. Might not be as unpleasant. So, thank you.
Just to tag off what Tori said there, I'm trying to get the realism of like, is that volume 11 or is that volume 5, right? And the way sound works, I mean, generally the sound wave as it goes out, it's a parabola, and then whatever it hit, it's going to bounce off that. And this situation, what's interesting, and why I was asking the questions that I did, was it a live band, is because, the sounds are going to go up and out. There are strategic ways that they could control their sound, because you can microphone cabinets up, and even in like recording studios like Questa, they do what's called BOGOs. They literally build a box around it and they'll mic it for you. And then you could send the sound to the PA and actually control. And so the reason I was asking those questions was like, is this raw sound that's just exploding from a certain point? And I'm there's kind of like a pinch point here where like I want to be sympathetic and understand, or the neighbor's concern, but I'm also looking at like realism is there. I mean, granted, I'm assuming that their tests are correct. They're within the realm of reason here. And then when I hear your commentary and you're like, hey, vacuum cleaner to small conversation, I'm like, yeah, that's actually, I hear stuff like that all the time. Like I hear my neighbors, AC unit every time it kicks on, or when they vacuum, sometimes at 2 a.m.
I mean, like, I'm thinking of like my neighbor weed whacking his yard for 4 hours in the morning, right? Like, or a lawnmower across the street, or a leaf blower. Like, I don't know what the level is at my house, but I mean, it's not. Those are everyday sounds.
And that's kind of what gets me on this one is they're completely fine with the 2-hour window. And that's city recommended. Like I don't see another area where I know of an application that's been necessarily done. So I'm just trying to balance that and how I apply that to this.
And also the final thing where it's like, it will be reevaluated if we get complaints, and you don't have to go down to the church to complain. You can just call the Atascadero city number and say, those guys over at the church are jamming all night long. You got to make them stop. I mean, like you don't have to go down there. So like, I like the way that they've sort of built in boundaries and sort of a reevaluation process to something. Yes.
Victoria.
Yeah, in hearing this conversation over on this side of the podium, it's almost like a question for Commissioner Hughes. Is there a way you think we as a commission could add a condition around it having like BOGOs or something to where it's even more padded? Perhaps it's not going to be an astronomical cost to the church, but something that has due diligence of trying to buffer anything.
The hardest part of that would be policing it, right? And then
Sure.
we would go back to the same situation as if someone's, calling, complaining. That's why I was wondering if they changed trajectory and stuff like that. I mean, we have had projects where we've literally had sound tests done And we've been like, hey, there's a sound partition wall here on the property, so people aren't hearing, animals.
Yeah.
And I mean, we haven't gotten like a formal sound test. That's the only thing that I think would really make me feel solid on that.
Yeah.
Is if you do go that route as running sound, you have to have your PA towers organized, like where your sound's going, right? And when sound goes to those PA towers, you can direct where your cone is of influence. So I mean, in a perfect world, you would have something more on the perimeter here facing back in at you, where the crowd's actually kind of going to hear things. But most outdoor sound, they're just going to face it, just going straight out towards the river, like they have it here. So I think actually it's more of just a complication, and how do we police it?
That would be just a mitigation strategy that if they haven't already thought of, could definitely use as a back pocket item if it became a complaint that the
Yeah.
city called you and said that a neighbor was wanting you to do something about it. So, okay. Not our burden to do that in the very beginning.
I do like where you went with that though, because it does give them incentive, especially because they mentioned wanting to be good neighbors. Like if one of those neighbors, and Dennis brought up a point, I mean, it might be, 65 over there. And even if they are within the realm of what they're approved, if someone's adamant about it, I mean, I would want to find a way to make them comfortable because.
Yeah.
you
Well,
mentioned- yeah,
I mean, we've had and this isn't the same example because it's not noise, but it's around smell analysis. Barbecues are much more smellier than a compost facility. People don't like the smell of compost. People generally love the smell of barbecue. Guess what got taken out of our county because of very small amount of neighbors that didn't like the smell of a little bit of nitrogen, methane. Yeah. So this is a very different example, but similar in the same respect that it's all relative at the end of the day. So
quick sidebar on that. So are you talking about the compost facility that was removed or?
I am.
Oh my God. I don't know that.
So anyway, that's just and this is relative. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at the decibels, but I'm not looking at decibels in that regard because it's a relative thing, no matter if this is changed 10 or 5 on each of these little circles I'm looking at. So I think I'm ready to punch it up.
I have a quick question. The last time this came before the commission, there were some ordinance violation request or submissions that I was wondering if those got taken care of or what happened to those?
So yeah, the reason that we wanted to look into them were to see if they were related to a Atascadero Bible Church performing amplified music outside of their conditional use permit, basically illegally, which is kind of what seemed to be implied. So we did look into those. I know that Phil had made some phone calls to those neighbors, and the complaint really seemed to revolve more about around being located next to the school that's there. I'm not sure actually if it's a Atascadero High School or North County Christian School, which would be right on the other side, kind of where that
So they were for
60
more
was.
for general noise control.
More general noises, the bell, voices, things like that, as opposed to the music and noise generated from the church directly.
Okay, thank you. I also had another little note, little tidbit. Staff may be able to answer this, they may not. On the signals at the corners, the little beeping noise they make. What is the decibel rating of that?
I do
I
not know
think
that
they're over
one.
80.
Because I will sit on my back deck and I'm like across the street, down the street, and I'll be having my cup of coffee and it'll be just a wonderful, beautiful day. And I hear this beep. I want to strangle that noise. But
on
I've
that-
gotten used to it. I've actually gotten used to it. I actually enjoy it now. And I
It's
just
like music.
think of it as a little bird in a
It's like-
cage,
yeah, there you go.
So
And on that sound note, since we were comparing, a rooster crows at 130 decibels. So if you've ever heard it, like I have neighbors with roosters. And I definitely hear them. But
Good
that's
on-
significantly louder, so.
With that said, though, would you rather hear a rooster crow or on the 4th of July, a boom outside of your house? And to me, a rooster is a natural sound. I'd rather hear a dog bark than a car race up and down the street anytime. even if the dog's louder.
It is, both a dog and roosters are natural sounds, but at 6 o'clock, just about anything is unnatural. So that's my opinion. So yeah, I just wanted to give like more context to sound levels because it helps me. So I just thought I'd share.
It wouldn't be crowing at 4 a.m. I could tell you that.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, is somebody willing to make a motion on this?
Commissioner Jason. Okay. All right. Well, I would like to approve this item with the amendment that we just strike the months of the ordinance. Is that sufficient to say that, staff?
To allow it year round.
Year round, yes. Thank you. Believe.
That's number 12.
Can you put up the
The COP.
recommendation?
Thank you. Yeah, striking only number 12 and it be year round.
I'm willing to second that.
That was a second by Randy. Okay.
Yeah, roll call, please.
Commissioner Carranza,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
With the condition that the church upholds its promise to be good neighbors. Yes.
Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
No.
Vice Chairperson King,
Yes.
Chairperson Vanden Eyck.
Yes,
Motion passes 6-1.
thank you. Oh, and congratulations to the church. You can hope you have some great events out there. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our second item. This is, we're seeing once again, the conditional use permit for 6505 Sycamore Road. This is being continued from June 20th. Any additional ex parte since our last meeting? We'll start with Victoria.
Apologies for the side talk. No expert.
Dennis,
No ex parte.
Randy,
No ex parte.
No ex parte.
No expert.
No ex parte.
and none for me either. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Mariah for her presentation.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so we're back with the Sycamore RV storage conditional use permit request, and I will explain the reason that we are coming back before you tonight. But first, I'll just go into the zoning of the property that we're talking about to remind everyone. The property itself is about 23.25 acres with a 6-acre lease area that the applicant is proposing to use for RV storage. The property itself is in the industrial park zoning district with the open space zoning district to the north. The Salinas River is beyond that. And then the county the Salinas is within the county, and then north of that is also the county's jurisdiction. So outside of Atascadero city limits. And then to the south of this property is the railroad property, and then a public zone to the south of that. So here's just an aerial view to give you an idea of the property and its size and the acre that's requesting to be leased for this recreational vehicle storage, which you can see there in yellow. So I want to go to the background, but I'm going to start from most recent and then go back to oldest. So this was brought to the Planning Commission at the last Planning Commission hearing on June 20th. As you might remember, we presented it, discussed it, and then the commission made a couple different motions, 3 of which failed. The first 3, 2 of these motions, as a reminder, were to deny the conditional use permit. 1 motion was made to approve. Again, these were all failed motions because there was no majority made on any of the three. So a fourth motion was made to continue the conditional use permit until staff reviews the general plan analysis and get to a point where the city council was comfortable with the future land use designation on this site. The general plan is pretty far out at this point, so the motion to continue to a date uncertain basically was deemed as an invalid action because it was almost like denying the permit, but without making the findings and actually denying it. So that was deemed an invalid action because it was moved to a date too far out in the future. So therefore, the item must be reheard for a new motion. So it's back before you tonight. So I am going to go over the presentation again, just to give you a full picture of what we're talking about. And then we'll go back for a motion at the end. So to go back even further, this was presented to the Planning Commission in November 2022. There were concerns of environmental impacts to an archaeological site there that were brought up. So the applicant did perform a phase 1 archaeological survey, which we'll discuss. The Planning Commission at that time also suggested a 10-year time limit on the conditional use permit, but as we discussed at the last hearing, that is very hard to add to the conditional use permit because it's hard to enforce and actually take away an approved use once it's been on the site. Going back even further, in 2007, the council adopted a zone text change to establish a new site-specific plan development overlay zone. This was PD 31 for a BMX facility. I did look back at the resolution from that time, and I just want to clarify that BMX is for non-motorized bikes. So these are just like mountain bikes, not motorbikes. The BMX facility was never constructed, and the site is currently owned by Atascadero Mutual Water Company and contains an existing fenced construction yard, which you probably saw on that first site plan that had some storage buildings in conjunction with it. Project being proposed here is a 2-phased RV storage lot that would eventually have 262 RV parking spaces. Phase 1 would have more RV spaces with 138, and then phase 2 would have 124. This requires a conditional use permit because it includes outdoor vehicle storage in excess of 10,000 square feet. And then we already talked about the difficulties in conditioning it to a maximum of 10 years. So I just want to go over the plan's phases here. The first one you can see in yellow would again include 138 RV parking spaces, a new perimeter fence around the whole phase 1 site, some site grading for the parking spaces themselves, but more for that stormwater infiltration basin that you can see up here in the top corner of the property. And then just to highlight that the property is located along the San Juan Bautista Trail. Currently, the trail kind of traverses through what will be the RV site if approved, but they're proposing to realign the trail here and make some improvements, which we'll go over. But staff has added a condition that the trail improvements be completed in phase 1 of the project. So moving on to phase 2, it's actually phase 2 at the top there. This again is an additional 124 parking spaces. They would obviously remove that dividing fence that would be between the phase 1 and the phase 2. And then they would extend the new vinyl coated chain link fence, which we'll talk about. That would be along the Salinas River there in the back of the site. So just to go back over the archaeological assessment that was requested at the first hearing last November. So the applicant did comply with the Planning Commission's request to provide this archaeological survey. This records and literature search was done and revealed that 19 studies had been conducted within a half-mile of the project. There were some cultural materials found at that time. In 1969 and 1972, the parcel was flooded, leading to the county and Caltrans to basically dispose of excess materials like asphalt and concrete in the area. So according to the archaeological assessment, there's about 10 feet of fill material on that site as of now. And then they did build up that berm in the back of the site between this project site and the Salinas River. So the site has been filled and the berm has been man-made since the city incorporated, actually, or before that, which would be 1979. So with this, the archaeological assessment found that no further investigations are necessary since they're not really doing a lot of grading, and the dirt on the site is mostly just fill materials. However, we did leave in condition number 25 that was originally on the conditions of approval, which requires archaeological monitoring during all ground disturbing activities. So they would have to have an archaeological monitor anytime they're moving any dirt on the site, just to make sure that if anything is found, it's being handled appropriately. So here we're looking at the overall site plan. I just want to point out some of the important things here. So this blue line along the front of the property, this is Sycamore Road down here. And then this would be the realignment of the trail. The blue line here is a new 6-foot tall vinyl coated chain link fence that would be screened by vegetation along the trail and then along the stormwater infiltration basin. The applicant, or there currently is a fence along Sycamore, a 6-foot tall just metal chain link fence that the applicant requested to relocate during the DRC, the design review committee hearing, and the design review committee did permit their request to move this just chain link fence to the opposite side along Sycamore, since it will not be very visible from Sycamore Road. Typically, we require vinyl coated chain link fence, but due to the lack of visibility on the site, the design review committee did recommend that they would be allowed to use just a plain chain link fence there. And then along Sycamore, along the trail, they are proposing a new split rail fence, or staff has actually added that as a condition. So it'd be a maximum of 4 feet tall and act as a buffer between Sycamore and the trail, but still allow visibility through it, since it would just be 4 feet tall and that split rail. So moving on to the applicant's landscape plan, this is broken up into a few different sections, but one of the conditions is that the applicant focus taller vegetation along the interior fence adjacent to the RV storage and shorter species next to the De Anza Trail. So within the fenced area, these would be the taller, higher, more screening species. And then along, especially between Sycamore Road and the trail, it would still be vegetated, but with lower species to reduce kind of that screened in, closed in area of the trail and still allow it to be visible from the road. The applicant had originally proposed some landscaping throughout the site, but has requested to remove that, which I know we discussed at the last hearing. Just for fear of it being hard to maintain and being damaged by vehicles driving over it. So they're requesting to remove that from their landscape plan. Staff has added a condition to include landscaping in front of the existing construction yard, which was not shown on the applicant's landscape plan, but since it's all one site, this is an opportunity and is required actually to landscape the entire frontage, which we'll look at a picture in just a minute, but currently there's no landscape there. So adding some landscaping would buffer additionally that existing construction yard from Sycamore Road. And then just to note that there are 6 coast live oak trees that will remain on site and be protected during construction of the RV storage lot. So going into what the code requires with landscaping, the municipal code does require that at least 5% of the lot in industrial zones be landscaped, which that has not been verified by the applicant, but I do not believe that it meets that 5% requirement at this point. The applicant is requesting an exemption from this requirement due to maintenance concerns, as I mentioned, and the visibility into the site. Essentially, the only ones who will see that landscaping are probably the people who are parking their RVs on the site. The site is screened by fencing and landscaping along Sycamore, which we just talked about, making that landscaping difficult to see, and then again, difficult to maintain. So the municipal code does allow for the planning commission to approve a modification to eliminate the minimum landscape requirement if a finding can be made that existing vegetation, topography, or structural arrangement preclude the need for landscaping. So based on the location and maintenance, staff is recommending that the planning commission allow for this modification to only require landscaping along Sycamore Road and the De Anza Trail, which will likely not get them to that 5% landscaped area on that entire 23 acre parcel. So we already talked about the fencing a little bit. I do want to just mention that one of the things that our code requires, in addition to that 5% landscape standard, is typically when you're doing any kind of chain link, it does need to be screened by evergreen vegetation. This is something else that was discussed at the design review committee, and the applicant requested a modification for this as well along the Salinas River, or the berm that is between this property and the Salinas River. So this is that chain link fence that we had discussed. And as you can see, there's not a ton of space for landscaping on this property once they factored in the parking spaces. And then once you go on the other side of the fence, you're reaching a tall berm. So one of the things that the applicant was requesting was to not include that evergreen vegetation along that chain link fence along the Salinas River. And I want to mention that, again, the design review committee did recommend approval of relocating that existing chain link fence, and that staff recommends an exemption to the standard. So moving on to lighting and security, which is often a topic when we talk about uses like these. There are 7 new light poles that are being proposed with a maximum height of 20 feet tall. So one of the conditions of approval that staff's recommending is to decrease the height of these light poles to a maximum of 16 feet, which would reduce light spilling onto adjacent parcels. And then the applicant is proposing lights that dim to low levels until motion is detected. So once it detects motion, it will turn on, but otherwise the lights will just be at dim low levels. And then as far as security, the applicant currently has an RV sale business in the city, which they contract with a local security company with 24-hour coverage. So the plan is to continue utilizing that service for this RV storage lot. So here we're going back to the site plan, and I just want to point out that those red circles are the light poles that we just discussed. And then the purple squares that you see are the proposed locations for the security cameras. So looking at some site photos, looking onto the site, this left picture here is where the proposed automated gate would be. The RV storage lot is proposed to be sort of self-service. So you would go to the gate, put in some kind of code, it would open, and then you would just park yourself. So there's no one necessarily manning the site at all times. So where you're looking is the location of the new automated gate. And then on the right-hand side of that picture is the existing construction lot. So you can see that their gate is open and they have materials stored there. And then on the right-hand picture, you can see that this is looking onto Sycamore. looking from Sycamore Road onto the site. This is looking across the street. This top picture again is looking to the northwest. So that would be the highway there in the background. You can see the bridge. And then you can see in both of these pictures, the berm that we were talking about before that goes up. And then on the other side, you would see the Salinas River if you were at the top of that berm. And again, the picture on the left is that existing construction yard. And I just want to highlight that our condition was to landscape the whole frontage area. So you can see it's kind of just fill area right now. So they would have to include that area in their landscape plan during construction. And this bottom picture here is just the De Anza Trail entrance that's there currently. So I don't know if we want to list all of the conditions of approval. They are in your staff report, and I'd be happy to talk about them if you have any questions. But I think that Kelly is going to highlight a new one that we've just added.
Thank you. So I believe that all the commission received a public comment today about potential eagle nest adjacent to the property site to a certain degree. We did check in with our city attorney and our local biologist that we contract with regularly. Our city attorney is available through our Zoom, which we don't normally do for planning commission. So if we do need him to speak, we will have to make sure that that works properly. But what they did suggest is if the planning commission chooses to move forward with approval this evening, there could be a condition added that a nesting bird survey and special status species survey be completed with the permitting of the RV storage facility, and that if any special status species were identified, including that potential eagle nest or other raptor nest, that then they would go through the any proper permitting process through Department of Fish and Wildlife or any other state or federal agencies as required by those laws in order to fully protect and or mitigate any impacts to that species. And so we are recommending, if the Planning Commission moves forward with approval, a condition of approval that would allow us to enforce that.
Thank you. So the findings that need to be made are just the standard conditional use permit findings. And then in addition, there is one about the reducing the vegetation. That's reducing that 5% amount, as well as the vegetation along the chain link fence along that berm that's along the Salinas River. So this last finding is that existing vegetation, topography, or structural arrangement preclude the need for landscaping. So it is one of the findings that need to be made just to exempt the landscaping requirements.
So we did prepare a categorical exemption for the project from CEQA. We did do an expanded exemption that did address the historic nature of the De Anza Trail and their proposed realignment. There was a question in the public comment that related to the potential special species, special status species adjacent to the site or in near proximity that called into question the exemption. We have spoken to our city attorney, and we do believe that the exemption is still valid, especially with the new condition added to ensure that there are no significant impacts.
Thank you. So with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution, which would approve the conditional use permit for the outdoor recreational vehicle storage lot in the industrial park zone. The commission can include modifications to the project or the conditions of approval for the project. The commission can determine that more information is needed and refer the item back to staff and just let us know what information is needed that you would like us to bring back before you. And then finally, the last option is that the commission can choose to deny the project. And if the commission does choose to do that, they must specify what findings cannot be made and provide a brief oral statement based on the information that we've received on why it cannot be made. And I know there was some question some questions that we received on what kind of uses can be allowed in this zone without a use permit. So these are things that would just come in for a construction permit. They may go before the design review committee, but they're not things that would go necessarily before the planning commission for approval. So we can go back to this list if you'd like, but I just wanted to let you know that I do have a slide prepared with these uses. And with that, staff's available for questions.
Thank you, Mariah. Any questions? Yes.
You had mentioned during your presentation that the applicant owned an RV business. Could this facility be used as a de facto storage yard for that RV business?
Yes, because it allows for RV storage. So if they were storing,
So if they could store their own
correct.
vehicles on it. On your discussion on cultural resources, you talked about when monitoring would be needed. What was the words that you used? Was it ground disturbance or grading disturbance?
I'll check and see exactly what the condition says, but the intention is during ground disturbing activities. So whether
So
they're
I'm just wondering if we need to define what that is. I mean, so would the laying of GG on the road surfaces be disturbance or not disturbance? It seems to me that the development of the stormwater basin, because I'm going to say they're going to hollow out some area with some type of lens, that would be considered grading activity then?
yeah, if the commission wants to further define it, I mean, when we're talking about archaeological resources, we're concerned with digging into the ground and not necessarily laying the, laying down DG, but if that's something, we can definitely look at that.
On the addition to the mitigated deck about the nesting birds and the migratory birds, the predatory birds, I thought that there was a requirement that if there's nesting activity occurring at a certain time, that activity is restricted within a certain distance of where that is located. Is that what we understand?
Go to the condition.
Yeah, so we're not recommending as part of the neg deck, we did do an exemption on this project, but it is recommended as the conditions of approval. There are certain activities that do have limitations. And with the nesting bird survey and the special status species survey, that would come with recommendations from a qualified biologist based on the distance that they are away and what activities they are. So a lot of times vegetation removals comes with the most stringent restrictions, especially if the vegetation removal is where the nesting birds are, then that is not allowed during nesting season. There are some grading activities that might be restricted depending on dust and noise and depending on proximity and which species are found. Or there might just be fencing restrictions to ensure protection of any areas that are in close proximity to any activity. So a lot of it depends on the species and how close they are to proposed activities and what those activities are.
And then are there periods of time in which no activity could occur because, between the period of time, I don't know, say April through June, because a species is known to exist or be prevalent during that period of time. And I thought there's some quirks to that.
Yeah, so the qualified biologist would look at those all of those factors during their nesting bird survey and provide recommendations.
So then there's potential that at some point, maybe no activity could occur because of what might be found by the biologist.
There's potential, however, there is a lack of vegetation on this specific site where this RV storage is going in. So it is unlikely that anything in the vicinity would preclude construction at a certain time, but we would need a qualified biologist to do that survey to let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Question. So I just want to clarify. So the applicant, their other business was an RV storage, or do they sell RVs?
RV sales.
RV sales, okay. And previously, when we last discussed this topic, there was mention of, we don't even know if we want to do the phase two. They were just trying to get it all in one go, just to have it out of the way. Do you know if the applicant has expressed that that's still the sentiment?
No, I think that's a good conversation to have tonight, but yeah, I mean, I do want to remind the commission that one of the alternatives is to make modifications. So, you know, if you thought phase one was okay, but you didn't want phase two, that could be something, or even defining where the lines are and having it, you know, brought back or whatnot. Those are some things that the commission can make determinations on.
All right, that's all.
Victoria.
This has nothing to do with the item, but is it everybody's microphone that needs to be turned up? Okay,
I think you need to just have your mouth close to.
a little bit closer so
Like,
that we can hear.
We
and
can, I can hear you fine, but
I-
Dennis, when you're speaking, if you could
okay.
be closer to your mic, because people can't hear you.
Well, yeah, I'll let you.
I appreciate the list that was put together of those allowed uses. So currently there is a PD 31 on this that's currently approved. So tomorrow this probably wouldn't happen, but the water company could say, oh, we're going to just put that BMX facility in there. And that's it, right? We would have no say in that.
That's my understanding. Yes, it would probably go to design review committee.
Yeah,
but-
they actually would need a master plan of development, and I believe that has expired at this time, so they
Okay.
would need to come back for that use permit.
Okay, all right. Can you please put up those lists of approved things? So these are allowed uses without a use permit, meaning that they could come in with plans to do these, and except for it going to DRC, which could not approve or disapprove the project, could only make modifications, right?
Correct, with the small note that if anything were to happen over 10,000 square feet of, you know, outdoor storage area, that does have to go to planning commission, and any buildings, I believe, over 50,000 square feet. 50,000 square feet
So they
would
could,
have to come.
they could do a building up to 50,000 square feet without having to come back to the planning commission for approval.
Yes.
Any other? Oh, Randy, go ahead.
No, just that. So I noticed on the list here, like large scale ag manufacturing, is that talking about like building like Caterpillar and tractors and all that?
Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of these uses, I mean, they're highly invasive, and they could just steamroll up to a 50,000 square foot building in there, and we really don't have any.
So, yeah, I mean, it
Okay.
is a conversation that this is our industrial zone. So the uses that are allowed in this zone are dirtier, more invasive. I'm not sure how to describe it, but than things that you would see around town just based on the zoning.
So with this, I mean, and just looking at what's approved, I mean, let's say Lowe's came into town and they wanted to build a 1 foot under 50,000 square feet and 1 foot less than 10,000 square feet, or up to. Pretty much there's nothing that really halts that process.
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
And also for storage and recycling and dismantling of vehicles. So a junkyard.
Mhm.
As
Yes.
long as it's less than 10,000
Yes.
square feet in
Okay,
an outdoor area.
Victoria.
Trying to wait for those small questions, but you know, I'm gonna do more than small questions here. I have a lot of papers on.
Speaking to your mic.
I know, I'm showing everyone, I have a lot of papers that are wandering around, and they have really nothing to do with the agenda item specifically, but I have been racking my brain over the last time we met. I understand that on paper, this is a zone that is approved, and this use that you're applying for, the applicant is applying for, is an approved use. an allowed use. And when we went back and forth on the motions, and it took three different motions in order for us to come up with something that everybody could have on the record, and it was concluded, we thought. It shows how contentious this issue is. It shows that, in my opinion, we need more than this body to make the decision on what the use should be in that zone. It also shows me, looking at my handbook for the planning commissioner's handbook that I was given back in February 2021, that there's a consistency issue with the zoning and the general plan use. So the general plan is important because it's the basis for many local land use decisions. Zoning, except in most charter cities, subdivisions, public work projects can only be approved when they're consistent with the general plan. This has already been zoned industrial. We have not updated our general plan since 2002, I believe. 2002. An action program or project is consistent with the general plan if, considering all its aspects, it will further the goals, objectives, and policies of the plan and not obstruct their attainment. We have this year, unfortunately for the applicant, and I think fortunately for how we want to grow as a city, an update on the general plan that will send us into the future of what we want. And currently, even with our general plan as it stands, even if we didn't have an updated general plan, there are a few items and policies within the general plan that I am prepared to state, and I've circled tonight, for why I don't think that this is consistent, even though I know that the industrial zone is such right now. I don't think it's consistent with how we want to grow. And I don't think that this planning commission is the only body that can make this decision. So as far as a brief oral statement, I'd be prepared to make one tonight. So.
You can after the public hearing.
Yeah, I'm just very concerned after reading the public comments and, like I said, delving into some of the roles on why we're in the hot seat. So yeah, that's all I have so far too.
Okay. Any questions of staff? Jason?
Staff, I know you guys have been working on the general plan and it's kind of been in the back of your minds for a while and it's coming up. And what is your general consensus, the feeling that you have that this particular area would see if it was unaffected when the general plan came to fruition?
Yeah, so we're not actually quite at that point with our general plan update yet. We do have some planned public outreach to talk about zoning and locations and actually applying the vision statements and visioning that we came up with our earlier public outreach. Some of our industrial zones and industrial uses will be part of that discussion, just like a lot of our commercial zones will be. But we are not at that point where we've received, city council or public input on what those could be yet. So we really don't have a feeling or a notion on where that might be. We haven't started that part of the process yet.
Didn't mean to put you in the hot seat.
And so when we talk about zoning in the general plan, it's not just going to be about what property is zoned what, but what is allowed uses for those zones. Both of those things will be up for discussion.
They could be.
Okay.
Yes, at any time. We haven't been directed to sort of hone those discussions yet.
Okay.
But there's a lot of things on the table with the general plan update.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, in that case, go ahead, Victoria.
One question when I was reviewing some of the general plan goals and policies is around adequate supply of city park facilities and what kind of parks, like pocket parks and other recreational, not just playground parks. And how that, and then I know that when I talk to staff, around trying to identify if we even have enough industrial. So could you maybe talk
It's a
about-
great discussion for the general plan update, which will happen
Yeah,
later
wish
this
we
year.
had that right now. Okay.
Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing. If we'd like to invite the applicant or the applicant's representative to come and address us, and please state your name for the record, please.
In a safe space.
My name is Don McAdam. I have a company called Southpaw Design and Construction. I'm representing both Tascadero Mutual Water and Valley Speed Marine. I want to clarify, when she said he owns an RV business, a lot of people think of those big, mobile homes on the road. His is primarily boats, jet skis, accessories for those. So those are the kind of recreational vehicles he has. Tascadero Mutual Water Incorporated in 1913. So they're 110 years this August into serving the community. I don't think they make these choices lightly. I don't think they just, hey, this would be a nice thing. You saw the whole list of, oh, possibly that could go in there. This is something that Chris, the owner of VS Marine, has had numerous requests from people. His service is primarily selling boats and servicing boats. He has a small area he's allowed to rent out for storage for people that, live out of the area or for whatever reason can't store boats on their own property. He's constantly asked by people, do you know any place we could, rent and store a boat? Because not everybody has 5 acres or enough room. At the last hearing, a lot of what I heard was a concern about traffic. Can Curb Rural support all the added traffic of all these people coming and going with boats? I sent some pictures to Mariah that unfortunately weren't real clear, but she kind of looked for some from where this site is to Curb Rural meeting 41. I started counting boats and RVs in people's yards, and I stopped when I got to 25. She's showing pictures now. There's bunches of boats and RVs that people have if they have the acreage and they have the room. But a lot of what the city is allowing as far as development, you've got city lots that are small and they have HOAs that say, oh no, you can't park this here. It can't be visible from the street. And those are the kind of people that say, hey, I've got this boat. I want to take it out to the lake on the weekend, but I can't keep it at my house. So that's kind of what Mariah has going by now is images of what there is along Curb Rural. So obviously the road can handle the traffic because all of these are parked along there and there is a demand. I don't see it as a huge traffic influx. I think that it's going to come and go just like, any other business where, hey, in the summertime, yeah, there's going to be a lot more boats brought in and out. But Chris, his parents started that business 64 years ago. He's never had a spill or hazmat containment problem. He's never had, the fire department had to go deal with something where someone spilled gas or contaminated the soil. He's very careful. I try to select the companies I work for on a basis of not always, hey, what's best for the community, but are they someone that I would be willing to work with? On Traffic Way, there was a storage yard that failed miserably, and you can drive by and see all the chain link fence, and it's pretty detrimental. Taking into account what potential impacts there could be, I've done work with Alan Baker at the zoo, and I asked him one time because lights and sirens, the ambulances and the fire engines are going out 41 constantly because that's a dangerous road. And I said, doesn't that freak out the animals in the zoo? I mean, hearing sirens all the time, it seems like it just drive them nuts. And he goes, and we get a lot of our animals from other zoos. They're in big cities. It doesn't freak them out. And then he points down the road at the Wall of Freedom, the big memorial that they built in 2008. He said, nobody came and talked to us about building that there. And he said, every time they have a ceremony, what do? 21 gun salute. Think that freaks out our animals? Oh yeah. So, you know, I try to look at, you know, that's the image of what was on Traffic Way. And yeah, it's not good looking, but you look at Chris at VS Marine, he's fenced, landscaped, he has lights, he has a security company. It's not a problematic business in this town, unless you need your boat service or you need, you know, something to do with him. Most people don't pay attention or don't know it's there. So I'm trying to weigh, you know, what the important things is. I know people were concerned about, you know, wildlife. The pictures that show the huge flat spot that we're developing is hundreds of feet deep, and then the berm is 12 to 14 feet high, and then the river's on the other side of it. I'm sure there probably are a lot of beavers and a lot of wild animals on the other side. The times I've gone out repeatedly staked and had those removed for me, I've only seen birds flying over. I've never seen any ground squirrels or wild animals because, like it was mentioned, this area was filled twice after it had washed out due to flooding. It's mostly asphalt and concrete. It's not natural soil. It's not conducive to wildlife burrowing or living on the site. Everything beyond that berm, yeah, that's the river, that's the creek. So those are uses that I don't really see us impacting. We're not putting in a business like, again, that list of, you know, auto dismantling, or just down the road, there's body shops and welding shops. They have big compressors that run. I'm sure the wildlife has adapted to it. You know, it's been there for decades in some cases. There was talk about, well, you get used to, you know, this noise or that noise, the ambient freeway noise. Is this going to be a beautiful thing? I wouldn't say beautiful, but I wouldn't call it an eyesore either. You know, people tend to talk down about mini storages and RV storage, but there's a need for it. You know, Tascadero Mutual Water is the owner of the property. They have a right to develop their property just like any other property owner in this town. They're trying to do what they see as a good fit. Chris is a good partner for them because he does things properly. He doesn't do it halfway. So that's most I can offer you.
Thank you. Any questions of our applicant? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We'll invite other members of the public to come and address us. If you can state your name for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody in the audience that would like to speak to us?
Hi again. This is Audrey Taub, and I know I submitted a comment. I just want to comment to what I've heard so far. One thing, if you could put up the uses again. One thing I'd like to point out, a Tascadero Mutual Water Company is very much aware that this is a flood zone. They like the RV storage project because they're removable. 0 of those, except maybe temporary events or temporary seasonal sales, are removable. This is a BS slide. These are not valid things that could be there. The second thing I'd like to point out is that I agree that the current area is just flat, very little vegetation. It's not full of wildlife, but the buffer seems to be important. And I just want that to be noted. And a third thing I want to mention is that I had put up a sign on the entrance to the Dianza Trail on the fence of the Atascadero Water Mutual Company property that you saw that stated that this was coming up. I put this up on Wednesday when I found out about this a week ago. Wednesday morning, by Wednesday afternoon, it was removed. By Wednesday evening, I replaced it. By Thursday morning, it was removed. By Friday, I replaced it. I'm just wanting to point this out because we live in a democracy, and a democracy requires an educated populace. And if the landowner or the applicant does not want our population to be educated, we should really be concerned. We're not talking about the ABC church who's wanting to be a good neighbor. We're talking about something else. And I'm glad to see that some people read the signs. I highly encourage the Planning Commission to deny this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, close enough. Good evening, Susan Harvey. I'm the president of North County Watch. Okay, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment tonight. It would seem to me that the question about the birds and the need for an analysis speaks to the reason why this project isn't CEQA exempt. It's a project that needs at least a mitigated permit. Also, CEQA analysis would let you know how much RV storage there is in the area and how far away it is and whether this is actually needed or not. And I haven't seen anything that discussed the issue of a prescriptive easement. It seemed to me that the De Anza Trail is a prescriptive easement across that property. And when you look at the overhead of the property, there are lots of worn lines through it. Something is crossing that. And if it's not people and horses and dogs, then it's animals. And we don't even know who uses that area as a corridor. And that's something that a full biological assessment would let you know before you make this decision. And the discussion of the general plan is a great segue into what I wanted to speak about in the second half here. Atascadero has some really underappreciated features that I want to talk about. Frankly, I think it's one of the most beautifully sited cities in the county. I know people will talk about this, that, or the other thing, but this place is magnificently sited. And I think it contributes to the public health and the well-being of the people here to have this kind of a siting. And I want you to be concerned about impacting the impact that what your decisions make. And it's an area that's contiguous with the Salinas River and lots of opportunities for recreation for people. And because I shop in Atascadero, when I drive around town, you're adding multi-family dwellings and apartments, which is really great, but they also are going to need a place to get out and commune. And I mean, Atascadero has an incredible amount of beauty to offer, and it would be a shame to make a poor decision regarding that. So I really support waiting for a general plan analysis. They're absolutely magnificent. General plan updates are magnificent. The entire community gets to come and say, wow, this is what we need. This is what we want. And it really gives you so much more guidance. The other thing is, I'd like to talk about a finding for denial. Usually a finding for approval is like what we need. And a finding for denial here would be the need to preserve Atascadero's unique setting, habitat, and river adjacent natural areas. And also, I see why somebody would want to put an RV thing there, like real estate wise, it's not very valuable, but public health and recreation value and environmental value are really high. And I think that those values, I would hope you would consider those values high on your list. And thank you so much. Oh, good. I didn't go over.
Hi, my name is Alejandra. I did not plan to speak today, but a lot of the things that were brought up were pretty cringeworthy to me. First of all, the whole zoning thing, we like to put lines on maps and assign uses to some of these things, but wildlife don't abide by those things. As a wildlife biologist, I can 100% say that this project will have an impact. It will have an impact. to say it's a significant impact, I don't know. I don't know, but it will have an impact. And the other thing too, I also specialize in erosion control. And if you could go back to that, the plan really quickly, the plans, yeah.
Okay, I think that we are back on.
As soon as our missing planning commissioner returns, we will
Perfect.
resume here. So just a second, and we'll resume with you. Just okay, we'll go ahead and continue with our, we never closed our public hearing, so we'll continue. Please start from the beginning. You can have your full time.
Thank you. Good evening, commissioners. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak to you about the proposed RV storage project. My name is Dolores. Whoa, so sound going in and out. I'm a member of the Slow Beaver Brigade. I came here tonight because I'm just coming and going. The Salinas River and the wildlife that call it home were not able to be present, although I did notice in the audience. But I thought maybe I could imagine with you what be here with us. And maybe that's appropriate because all of us have drunk of its water. Say that the Salinas River is inside of each of us. If we had more than 3 minutes for telling us the stories of its ancient life, which likely began many millions of years ago. Hello, yes, okay. So if we had more than 3 minutes, and I almost have more than 3 minutes by now, the river might start, if it were here to tell its story, by telling us how it began many millions of years ago, probably in present day Los Angeles County, but then eventually carried north, not by the 101, but by tectonic plate drift. It might tell us that it first saw humans about 13,000 years ago. It might giggle with us to think that its headwaters today are in a place called Los Machos Hills in San Luis Obispo County. It might congratulate us on recent surveys done finding beavers throughout its main stem and virtually all of its major tributaries. It might invite us to cool our feet in its waters this weekend when the weather will get unbearably hot once more. And it might promise the water storage and protection from fire that beavers, once allowed to thrive, will provide us and our fellow wildlife. The river might tell us stories of lovers, people fishing, bird watching, recreating, and more. But it will likely ask us not to park RVs next to it, but instead, with deep love and faith in restoration, ask us to revitalize its home, which is our home, and home to our non-human siblings. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Jody Olson, and I had a few questions from the presentation from staff. And I did look over the report previously. I could not tell if the landscaping was native vegetation or not. So I would like to request that it be required that it's native vegetation. That's one thing. Another thing is the lights going from dim and motion activated to brighter lights. can they not be off and then motion activated to bright lights? Why do we need lights on all the time when there's 24-hour security in a fenced and locked gate? So just, it just adds more light pollution. And the other thing is the east side along the river, the chain link, the landscape was not required. And I think looking ahead for uses along the river corridor, that should be screened also. I think it'll have an impact. The view shed is important, and they're only blocking, what you see from the road and not the rest of the development. And then I was also concerned about runoff and oil fuel going, through the base or through the infiltration basin, but other people have mentioned that. So those are recommendations I would make, the lighting, native vegetation, and also landscaping the chain link fenced area along the river. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Finlayson. I live on Sycamore Road, 7170. And a few things of concern for me. One, I just want to highlight also the zone AE, the flood zone. I looked it up and it is, it's in a 100-year flood zone. So it's a 0.1% chance of flooding annually, or a 26% chance in 30 years. So we haven't seen that yet, right? The last flood, it wasn't that much, but that's really what that is. So the uses of it, as it was mentioned earlier, is really true. I'm a builder myself. Am I gonna build in a flood zone AE? I'm not gonna build anything there. So really, there's very few uses for that land. Being that I also live on Sycamore Road, we see light pollution from the hospital, Tascadero State Hospital, and now it seems like we're going to see it from the north of us also. That concerns me. And I also want to bring in a wildlife corridor. So we tend to think in terms of economics and how we can make a profit and where the needs are to make a profit. And as a builder, I understand that, but I think there needs to be a balance also. Wildlife need a corridor to move. Deer need a corridor to move. So deer they hop our fence so they can go to the Salinas River, and I'm really fine with that. So I fence my trees. They don't eat all my trees. I know they're, once the trees are mature, they're fine. Deer can nibble on them, not a problem. So if we start keep encroaching on these wildlife areas, we're going to see less wildlife. And we need wildlife. It's part of a healthy habitat. So when I want to recreate, I can choose to get in a boat and that's really loud and ski behind a boat on a lake, which to me is not that fun. Or I can go to the Salinas River and walk it and get rejuvenated because there's plants and wildlife out there. And if you slow down and actually sit down and listen, you get to see wildlife. So there's a lot of wildlife out there. You have to actually just stop walking, stop talking, and observe, and then wildlife will appear to you. And most of us in the city, people don't see wildlife when they hike because they're noisy. Walking is a noisy activity. Talking to people while you're walking is a noisy activity. There's an abundance of wildlife around us in Atascadero. You just have to slow down and listen. And I think that's kind of what I recommend to deny the project. I think there's much better uses for that land rather than an industrial zone area. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susie Reynolds, and I'm a longtime resident of Atascadero. I walk Sycamore at least 3 times a week, and I'm just really familiar with that area. And what I'm hearing from you and hearing from us is you talk about a vision for Atascadero. and where we're headed with that vision. And this idea of a general plan is really encouraging. I look at Traffic Way and that industrial area there where a storage unit used to reside. And I think that's what's going to happen to Sycamore. And that really saddens me. And we're going to lose that access to the river that is, as everyone is stating, is healing and a really important part of our well-being. And to just remove that and put storage there, you're just going to remove it, and you're not going to have that area for that general plan and that vision that is a possibility out there. I know you're saying it's there in the future, but you take this away and you won't have that part of your vision. I'd like you to really think about that. And my dog and I will really, really miss being able to be in that area.
Good evening. My name is Dwayne English. I'm a longtime resident of Atascadero, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak up on this. I just want to go on the record that I oppose the proposal for development of an RV storage yard. I was at the river last night. When you're in that environment and the water's running, the wildlife is amazing. We recorded over last week, we recorded over 20 different species of birds in that area, including the great blue heron, the great horned owl, quail, and dozens of other species of birds, make their home right there on the other side of that berm. And I just cannot envision how the storage of over 250 recreational vehicles is compatible and not impacting that wildlife in a negative manner. I just can't see it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm not clear where I'm supposed to speak with this. I'm Ann Colby. I got it. Okay. To track on what this fellow just said, I too am of the feeling that if you approve this, you're going to be giving up the opportunity to create a trail system, a park system that goes from one end of Atascadero to the other. We all use it that way now, but you can dedicate it. You can make that happen if we get the general plan changes going. If you approve this use now, it's lost. It's just a tremendous connector for the southern section and the northern section of the trails now. Could you put up the site plan, please? I also wonder why, if we're all unsure whether this is really needed or necessary, why you wouldn't start with stage 2 instead of stage 1, because then all the god awful looking RVs would be tucked behind the existing industrial lot there that's already in use. And then if that proves to be successful, maybe then they could move on, but at least we wouldn't have dedicated that entire property to this experiment. In terms of more immediate concerns about if this is approved, I'm very concerned as a dog walker and horseback rider about where the trail location, because when I'm going to be put in between a 6-foot-high chain link fence and a 4-foot-high split rail. I understand the thinking behind that. Normally it would make sense if there wasn't the possibility of a freight train coming at me almost directly across from me that's going to look like the world's worst predator to my horse. And I have no escape route to get away from it. So to me, that's a scary thing that could be an accident waiting to happen. I'm also concerned that that trail, when you look at the property now, it looks like it's in the existing drainage swale. And that doesn't work very well for a trail. So I don't know if that's going to be graded out and taken care of or not. I also would like to address a concern about whether we're going to be able to access the berm that's up behind the far side of the property, because that's how we access the next section of the Salinas River, which is the lushest, greenest, water-filled, gorgeous section there is. And if we can't get to that, we have to detour long, long distance around, which creates more risk for people and horses. I'm also concerned about the new requirement for having the landscaping put in front of the existing construction yard, because that pathway, which is nice and wide and clear and just filled with wood chips now, is how people from the Sycamore neighborhoods, whether they're walking or whether it's kids on horses, they can get up on that fire point against that chain link fence and be safe from the road. If you require that they put lush landscaping in there, it's going to shove them back down right towards the pavement. And that's a fast section of road. And there's big commercial trucks that come and turn into that industrial area just past that property. So that to me would be very dangerous as well. I'm also not clear what happens when that trail ends up at the north end, the riding and hiking path, whatever you want to call it, when it hits a Atascadero Water District property again. Are they going to have fenced across that? Are they going to leave it wide open to allow us to get in through there? Is there going to be a step over? How do those two properties meet? There's nothing in the plans I see that explains that. Okay, so all those things concern me about my safety, the safety and welfare of my other friends that ride and take their kids and walk their dogs there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Chapman. I live on Cortez down there. I go down there every day and walk my dogs for the last 15 years. I've lived in the area for 51 years. This is one of the last open accesses to the river. I like Chris. He's a good guy. I bought a boat from him. I have a place. I made a place for it. He needs to find another spot, maybe El Camino and Del Rio, the other side where Kmart was or Walmart was going to go in, somewhere else, not here. And there's only 5 boats on that road in between there and El Camino, not 25.
Good evening again. I'm Teresa Robinson. I'm a horsewoman and a member of the Atascadero Horsemen's Club. There's something very special about our river and the corridor it provides for animal life. And if you're not experienced with horses, it's kind of magical because you can, as a horse rider, you're somehow accepted by wilderness and wildlife, and you can get so close and you have such wonderful opportunities to view wildlife. And so I will share with you with reservation that I have seen on horseback mountain lion, bobcat, foxes, skunks, raccoons. I finally got down in there and saw a beaver doing its thing. That was a challenge. But you have to go at the right time. You have to be patient. You have to be quiet. And it helps to be on horseback. I've seen lots of birds. Some of them stay and some of them are just on their migratory paths, but those include bald eagles. And last summer, I spent a great deal of time tracking a family of great horned owls. So if I went out at the right time of night, it's incredible. And if you drive by the proposed site in the middle of the day, you're likely to see nothing. But I would encourage you to think of that as a corridor that's super valuable and a buffer zone for those wildlife. If you're not into that kind of thing, I'd like to share with you who we see when we're down in the riverbed. So we've become somewhat of goodwill ambassadors. And while we're down there, we've met the Atascadero Adventure Club, which is a club for disabled, challenged children. And they're down in there doing their thing and exploring the water and exploring wildlife. The Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I've also met lots of families, lots of dog walkers, lots of equestrians, members of the Beaver Brigade, which is always fun. And I've also met members of the Pacific Wildlife Center. And some of you may not be aware of this, but the Pacific Wildlife Center, which is now centered in Morro Bay, brings their wildlife to Atascadero, not the marine mammals, of course, but they bring wildlife to our riverbed to release it. So that tells you how important that area is to be able to provide homes for those animals. So anyways, I guess what I would like to say is that I think that approval is premature. I think that we need to wait and develop a general plan that includes that wildlife corridor as a nature preserve, but also something that all of our community can enjoy, our dog walkers, our hikers, our equestrians. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm Scott Kelly. Thanks for allowing me to talk.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
I'm Scott Kelly. Thank you for allowing me to talk. I've been living here my entire life, and that space provides a place for not just nature lovers, but everybody from RCs to recreational vehicle users. I myself own recreational vehicles. I love using them, and I don't need that space for them to go there. And there's plenty of other spaces for them to be. If this plan did get put through, they've already taken away some of our public parking on that road to access the river. Have you guys considered putting in any additional parking so we can still have access to it? If so, where? And then on top of that, it's just it's my general knowledge. I couldn't come up with a number of the code or anything, but if the trail's been established, I've understood that it cannot be taken away from the public, even from private property. I'd like that to be considered too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to address this? Okay, one more.
Hi, my name is Ray Hosh. I'm a native, grew up here, been in that river for the better part of 45 years. I've lived next to it for probably 40. I've seen the city go through a lot of changes. I'd like my city back from 45 years ago. So I understand where everybody's coming from, but I've also watched this city change, and I've also watched people have to apply through the city for permits and follow the codes, follow the planning committee outlines. And as a builder, if you're a builder, you know this, you're restricted. This gentleman's trying to do something that's allowed right now by our current plan. He's trying to go through the right hoops. He's not designing something in a floodplain, or he's an idiot. We talked about this last month when I was here, and I stuck around because this is my neighborhood. I wasn't here for this. I wasn't going to say anything. That area had been filled. It's been disturbed. It's not pristine. The river is over the bank. It will stay over the bank. This project does not go over the bank. It's frustrating to me to see people complaining about their individual desires for somebody else's property and project and desire and ambition. And as a builder, I try and take pride in what I'm doing, and I'm trying to take pride in making sure it's a product that's for the betterment of my client, and I need to be able to sleep at night at that. I've talked to this gentleman probably 10 minutes the last two times we've been here. I get that same impression from him. And as a builder, you should know this. You can read people pretty well, right? We can't ask this board to hold up what's allowable right now for the hopes that it might change in the future. There are regulations he's got to follow. He needs to work within those, and that needs to be what happens right now. When the next plan comes out, if that area has been addressed, that area has been redesigned, and so be it. This is a conditional use. I understand that in the future, and we don't know when that future is, it'll go back and have to meet those new guidelines. Ma'am, I take exception to a couple of things you said about putting the sign up and having it down, and putting the sign up and having it down. And you accused this gentleman in the Atascadero Mutual Water Company of taking it down. He said last month he put his stakes up and they got pulled down too. There's all kinds of people in that river. And unfortunately, even the homeless, as they walk by my house on Sycamore Road daily. It is, I just feel like this guy's been under attack. I get the concerns, I feel the concerns. I just hope you guys will do what you're supposed to do within the guidelines that have been set right now. And that's what I've got.
Thank you. Is there any other comments? Have you already spoken? We appreciate it if you limit it to your one time.
Hi, I'm Stephen Plowman, longtime resident of the county. And I just want to point out that the Salinas River is one of the few rivers that flows north in California into the ocean. It's a magical part of Atascadero. It's a magical part of every part of the county that it goes through. And to lose any portion of it at this point is not showing very much foresight. Obviously, many of the problems that we have with overpopulation on the planet as a whole, this is where they start, on every river and waterway in every hometown. So do you really want the river to look like a parking lot for RVs? I mean, it's up to you really, but it's going to have a lot of impact on a lot of people's lives. I just want you to consider how important the Salinas really is. Thank you.
As everybody that has had an opportunity to speak to us? Thank you. We'll go ahead and close public comment, but I would like to have staff answer some of the questions from the public. I wrote down some of them. Will this project impede the trail in any way?
So we looked at the trail and right now it's not really defined. And so basically this project will not be removing the trail. It will just further define where the trail is located.
And any of you explain the need of the basin? There was some suggestion that it would be a storage area for hydrocarbons, and that there'd be runoff from the site into the stormwater basin. That's hydrocarbons.
I can address that a little bit. Our engineering team is not here this evening. So all projects that have some level of impervious surface or stormwater runoff do have to comply with our post-construction stormwater requirements. Those include a number of factors such as simply just stormwater retention, but also some level of filtration, just depending on the characteristics of the project. I am not familiar with what any sort of filtration or water cleaning will be required for an RV storage facility. But we do have regulations that would require that that be analyzed with a permit.
Will the berm be still available to the public?
So as you, oh, Kelly's pointing to it. Yes. So as you can see, there is still a path to that berm that will be available and not fenced off there.
Now, just for clarification, this property is owned by the water company. Is the property directly to the north also owned by the water company?
No, so this property is owned by the water company, and then the property that actually has the Salinas River and north of that would be within the county's jurisdiction.
How about the other way? Like
Oh.
where the trail goes? Is that?
So
still-
right, that location right there.
Yes,
So that is still part of the same property. So that would be owned by Atascadero Mutual Water.
and they're not proposing blocking the pathway in any way. In fact, they're enhancing it.
No, so it's my understanding that since the 4-foot fence would be going along Sycamore, that the trail entrance would be moved. There may be, a sign or an entrance indicator, but the grates would be moved further down to the end where the 6-foot fence would start back up.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a dimension of how far that fence, where the yellow line is, where the new chain link fence is going to go? Do we know the distance in between that and the split rail fence?
I want to double check, but I believe it's 30 feet.
30 feet. Okay. All right, so we'll bring back for discussion here. Victoria, I see you have your hand on your mic.
Yeah, I
Go
do.
ahead.
I just want to tell everyone, thank you for coming tonight, and that we hear you, and we have very specific things that we have to find in order to approve or deny this project. Unfortunately, the magicalness of the Salinas River is not one of them. So just understand that we hear you, but we have to phrase any kind of denial within these findings. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. And I just want you all to know that, I think we're in hour 5 of this discussion. So like we take our job very seriously. So whether it goes the way you want or not tonight, just know that we appreciate your participation in this, and we take all of your comments seriously. But know that we are under very specific guidelines as to how we do this. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that.
And just kind of dovetail into that, so we own, the last time we met, there were 6 of us, and we were basically like a hung jury, right? So we couldn't come to a conclusion. So we decided to push it off to some date in the future where we would get some clarification and maybe the general plan would update. And we were told by the city attorney that we could not do that, that it had to be an up or down vote. So that's why it's back here tonight, just so you know that if we could postpone it to a future time when we could discuss the general plan, we would certainly do that. But here in this meeting, we can only choose to approve it or disapprove it. So any other discussion from our Randy?
I would like to say Tori really hit the nail on the head with saying that we hear you, and there's complications with how specific guidelines are. And, there's been a lot of environmental talk, and there's generally 2 concepts that started with the environmental movement as far as the way that we manage now. You had the original John Mueller and then Gifford Pinchot when it comes to what the expectation of what you want, and then trying to manage with our growth. And that's a hard point on this project. I do understand that everyone is here because they have strong conviction, And I hear that and I understand that. And it's really hard to have to look at the guidelines because we all have the personal way that we may naturally want to be, but we have to disassociate ourselves from that. So that being said, this may be a late night, so hopefully we have some good conversations here and we figure out what we can move forward with.
Comments from
I just had a question for staff. That list of items for approved usage of the property. There were a couple of different comments and they're contradictory. Any of these allowed uses would be pretty much just go through, maybe review and be approved, right? Wouldn't have to come back to the planning commission.
Yes, that is correct, with the exception of over 10,000 square feet of outdoor storage space or a 50,000 square foot building.
And that's repeating that. But I heard someone else say that wasn't, so that none of these would be allowed because of its flood area position.
So the flood, being in a floodplain doesn't necessarily preclude the use from going there. It would just require further engineering and construction standards and basically designing the project. Whereas these are RVs and they're obviously mobile structures, so they are not subject to the same building requirements.
So that was not entirely accurate. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because that property there is unique in where it's at. It has it's kind of difficult to get to, because you've got one access road in one direction and the other access road under the bridge. And I don't see it as being I see it as a thoroughfare. I take that road often to work and I work over there. But I don't see it as being something that people are going to normally travel to or from if something were put there that was not industrial. It's almost a destination for that. So with my thinking, I was really looking forward to having the general plan be updated because it is old and things have changed. The way we think about our city planning has changed so much in the last 20 years. I mean, we've learned so much in the last 20 years. So it's very easy to make mistakes now and go, wow, we wish we hadn't done that. And so I think that's why we're being really taking our time to decide on this. So this doesn't seem like it's a forever plan. An RV park is pretty non-invasive. I mean, it's very easy to pull out. It's parking spaces. So I could see something else that would really not work well in this area and be detrimental for a long period and be very difficult to back out of. So we kind of have to weigh that. If there was a way to wait until that general plan came to effect and then put something there that would fit within that, I would be eager to wait for that. I would say that I'm almost pleading with the applicant to say how important is it to go forward with this right now to kind of put us in the spot. So with that, I don't know what else to say. Let's go ahead and have some more discussion.
I have a question for staff. You mentioned earlier that the trail, it wasn't considered established. Is that the city's stance that the trail is not established?
So not that the trail's not established in a way that it doesn't exist, but it doesn't have any trail defining features that put it in its exact location right now. So we're just finding that it can be relocated because right now it's not defined in its location.
So if the water company, let's just say we decline to pass this, water company decides we're going to fence everything up. This isn't really confirmed necessarily. I mean, people are just making their own trail. What stops them from doing that?
So they can't close off the trail completely. They can't stop people from using the trail. If they, I don't know what would happen if they wanted to realign it themselves, but basically it has to be a trail.
So the reason I'm asking is at what point is it defined? Because if it moves forward with what they want, we are kind of defining, we're like highlighting our areas out. But with what I heard earlier, I'm going, it almost seems conflicting as far as what it is right now. So that's just kind of, so it's accepted that there is a pathway there, but the pathway is not defined.
Correct. The location.
So if they put a fence up and people just go around it, if it's still in their property line, is that considered the new pathway?
Yes. Yeah. So wherever people walk would be the trail, I suppose.
Okay.
If I could just make a comment, I really wish the water company were here right now. This is 2 meetings we've had that the water company representative has not been here. And I think it's unfortunate as property owners, if you're a property owner in this town, you have a vote for the board of the water company, right? So you have a say in who sits on that board. And then that board is the one that has made the decision to go forward with the same project. So you could have, any one of us could have gone to their meetings and heard the discussion and said, no, that's not what we want at that location, right? It's just the same venue, but it's the water company instead of us. And I just think it's unfortunate that their representative is not here. I like to think that the water company, because of who they are and because they are the purveyor of our water and they have to protect our water, that they have done their due diligence in determining that this is the least harmful to the piece of property. But I wish they were here to say something along those lines. I'm just inferring because I trust some of the decisions they make, but I don't know if I should be trusting that as well. So that's just my comments right now. I'm sorry. We'll go with Victoria because she's just wants to say something so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I want to have a really healthy discussion, and there was a few things that were said that were new than November or even last month. So I appreciate that, the staff's new condition that they want to put about the bird study. I do appreciate Ray Hosh's comment about, just there's a frustration with, there's zones, there's legalities put in place for a reason. So why don't we just follow that, and then move forward? Okay, done deal, done. Well, yes, there's all these papers in front of me. And yet then we have real humans to look at real time what's happening, and what was put on paper for our general plan was a little over 20 years ago. And we have to look at, yes, it was zoned industrial. I don't know exactly where the piece of paper said, but I talked to John O'Neill, the general manager of AMWC, right before our last meeting. And this property area was deeded by the founder of our colony, and that was to protect our water supply. This section that we're looking at for the proposed RV, he said in his own words, there's no way that they would pump water in that area. So it's like they're looking for they're looking for the most benign use that they can put on there for passive income, right? And they're not even going to get the income from this. They're leasing a lot. So they're just going to get funding from the lease, not the actual business that the company is going to be putting on here. So here you have this historical property that, just whether they wanted it or not, it's the Atascadero Mutual Water Companies. They can't do what they want on it with the wells. They literally use one of the wells, number 25, I think I remember him saying on the phone, for just testing. And if they could draw from it, they would, to benefit us as community, so they're just, yes, they are looking for the most benign use. I think there's a bit of fear tactic going on with looking at, well, there could be a Home Depot and there could be a microbrewery and there could be this and that. And, I really don't think that they would want that either. They want their options opened. This is a great way, because whether or not the RV and the boatyard, I'll just say, let's stop calling it an RV thing. But whether or not the boatyard goes in, they get to keep the cement lot, they get to keep the split rails, pipe rail, whatever is going to be in the front there, they get to keep the landscaping, and then everything else, they could just say, you're out of here, if conditions change, and they get to keep that, which for them, it's an improvement to the site. So I don't see why that would be harming, Tasha and Rich Water Company. It's more about the consistency with what we want to see and what's already laid out. Like, we can wait for the updated general plan. Apparently we can't on this motion. So we just either have to backbone it up and deny it as a commission, or we have to approve it and find that these findings are allowable for us, or we amend a couple things and approve the damn thing. There's a policy within the land use currently, policy 6.1, that says ensure that development does not degrade scenic and sensitive areas, including historic sites, creeks, riparian corridors, which is the biggest thing in question, I think, wetlands, woodlands, hillsides, and other viable habitats. It goes on with all these programs, a part of our general plan of how we do that. And then there's a goal, land use 11, provide an adequate supply of city park facilities to all Atascadero residents. We just heard from staff that that's something that they're going to reevaluate if that's actually the case, that we have enough park facilities and what kind of park facilities. So some of these things are unanswerable. And I just think I would like to welcome the applicant to reapply after the general plan update has been done in 2024, because it to me, it's obvious that there's an inconsistency. And I think that we need to either own that as a commission and state that as a finding, or let's move forward and say, we just can't find anything. I hear this, like, I'm sorry, I'm not sorry, from the part of my commissioners, and that frustrates me. So, and I respect you guys.
So just want to respond real quick. My mention as far as concerns of like what was moving into that area, they are legitimate. I mean, we were at one time looking at, having another store come here, and granted that area, the zoning, and it didn't fit the area, and there were reasons it went through. With this area, there's a reason I keep bringing up the path definition, because we also have the ability here with this project to actually put definition in what's going on. Right now, you have a balance between what the public has, been able to enjoy, and then where is the definition of that is their domain, right? And we're teetering on this point of like, oh, it's there, but it's not. And that's where I'm having my largest concern with this, because at least with the plan going forward, they have dedication showing exactly where it's at. And that's where I keep going back and forth on this, where I'm like, if I was a property owner and I was in this situation, right? And eventually I'm like, okay, well, nothing's going to get done there. I would say, public fend for yourself, right? And then they're just going to do what they want to do. And the hard part of being this and having to separate myself personally from where my opinions are on it is, we know something will go in there. And like there was talk earlier about like, oh, that's considered the 100-year mark. No one would ever do this. The greed of man is something that I think we've all been surprised at, right? And I have seen plenty of developers, and this is not applying this to this case, but I have seen people go, oh, that would be an insurance problem down the road. So like as a commission, I'm trying to balance what's being established for the public here, and like what do they really benefit from, and how are they benefiting? There's been a lot of talk about the corridor and the wildlife, and I'm wondering, with the biologists being recommended to look into this, maybe they should also analyze, what is the corridor? I mean, I've driven by there a million times. I've walked through the property, and Is my interpretation of the corridor correct necessarily? Probably not. So that's just kind of, I wanted to put that out there, that that's kind of my hard teetering point as far as the path, because it's really hard to say it's established and then, but it's not, and how it's kind of, we're dealing with public and private just kind of headbutting right here, so.
And
We're
they said you have
looking at
go ahead.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we have defined about the trail at this time is there's an entrance. That's defined. There's maybe another one down the road a bit, but beyond that, we don't know where the people walked when they walked a long time ago. It could be completely somewhere else, but this happens to be the one piece of land that allowed for the continuation of a historical trail that existed at some time in somewhere in that area for it to exist today. That's the only reason why it's there. If there was a more convenient place for it to be, it would be there. My issue that I'm having is that if we were able to see into the future, into the general plan, that the discussion that we have seen today and that I read in the statements that were provided to us would not go away. They would be exactly the same for whatever project that there would be in the future that the general plan would look at. This would continue. I look at the use, I believe the last meeting, there was a discussion about the water company that they wanted to kind of keep their options open on the property. So they really weren't interested in putting a 49,990 square foot building on it, because that would eliminate some of their options, which they want to keep open. I don't know how long the lease is, but leases have time periods on them. Sometimes they have written in them that they can be renegotiated. Sometimes they don't. So depending on the content of the lease, this use could go away at a certain point in time, or we don't even know if it'll be successful. We know that there's another RV lot that used to be on Traffic Way that no longer exists at this time because it wasn't economically feasible for whatever reason. I don't know why. So the same could be true here. At our last meeting, I proposed the idea of approving one phase at this time and versus the two phases, and then have the applicant come back for the second phase for another approval. And that was one of the motions that got turned down. Again, I know from my experience that none of this discussion that we've heard tonight or read is going to go away if we wait for the general plan to happen, because it's going to happen then at that particular time. So at our last meeting, I voted for the option that we had because we were at a point where we weren't going anywhere. We had only 6 of us here. And we kept on butting our heads, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. I wanted to move on, so I supported the motion that was everyone else supported at that time. With that said, I would like to make a motion that we make a motion that recommends approval of the project based on the findings and recommendations of staff in their report.
Dennis, could you just clarify in your motion whether that included the revised added condition about the nesting? beds
Yes,
or-
it includes the revised conditions for the nesting habitat that we put in.
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
No.
Commissioner Carranza, No. Commissioner Heath,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson King,
No.
Chairperson Van den Eyck.
Let me hold off for a second. So it puts me in a really interesting position. Let me first state that we're actually fortunate that it's the water company that owns this piece of property. It could have been a private developer that bought the property from the state, right? The state owned it previously, and then the county owned it, and it's been filled in. It was a corporation yard. So heavy equipment was stored on that property for years. And I believe that the water company will do the right thing. And if it's not working out, they will revoke the lease. So I vote yes.
Motion passes 4-3.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I know this is a very sensitive topic. Some of us don't like making these hard decisions. We'd certainly prefer to have them made by somebody else. Is this, can I ask staff, is this an appealable decision?
Yes, so any decision made by the Planning Commission is appealable to City Council. There is a fee if it is filed by a member of the public, and no fee if it's filed by a member of council. That appeal does have to be made within 14 days of this decision. And if anybody would like to pursue that option, you can definitely reach out to staff anytime within that 14-day period.
Also, if you have an ear of a council person and you want to appeal this, I would get their ear, because they can do it without fees to appeal this issue. So I don't like saying, hey, council, it's on you guys, because we have to make these decisions too. But that is certainly an option for those of you who are not pleased with the outcome of tonight. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. It looks like our director is not here. Do you, Kelly, do you have a director's report for us?
I do not. We don't see any items for the upcoming hearing, but we will keep you guys posted as we get closer to that date.
Thank you very much. Well, any commissioners' reports?
I report that I'm hungry.
Well,
I would like to note that the heat has been hot, but my garden is loving it. And it has just gone nuts over these last 2 weeks.
Well,
And the tomatoes are turning red, and
thank goodness
peppers are
it's for your garden.
growing, cucumbers are coming, everything's happening.
Yes, we're gonna end the meeting now. Thank you very much until our next scheduled meeting.